Glories to Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. All glories to Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrta Madhya Lila, Chapter 24, Text 252. Narada Sange Vyadhera Vana Parshana Haila Tanravakya Suni Mane Bhaya Upajila. In this way, through the association of the great sage Narada Muni, the hunter was a little convinced of his sinful activity. He therefore became somewhat afraid due to his offenses. Purport. This is the effect of associating with a pure devotee. Our preachers who are preaching Krishna consciousness all over the world should follow in the footsteps of Narada Muni and become purified by following the 4 principles of chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. This will make them fit to become Vaishnavas. Then when they speak to sinful people about the teachings of this Krishna consciousness movement, people will be affected and take the instructions. We receive instructions in devotional service through the disciplic succession. Narada Muni is our original guru because he is the spiritual master of Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva is the spiritual master of our disciplic succession. Therefore, we should follow in the footsteps of Narada Muni and become pure Vaishnavas. A pure Vaishnava is one who has no ulterior motive. He has totally dedicated himself to the service of the Lord. He does not have material desires, and he is not interested in so-called learning and philanthropic work. The so-called learned scholars and philanthropists are actually karmis and jnanis, and some are actually misers engaged in sinful activity. All are condemned because they are not devotees of Lord Krishna. Everyone has a chance to become purified by associating with the Krishna consciousness movement and strictly following the rules and regulations. By chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, one can become free from all contamination, especially contamination brought by the killing of animals. Lord Krishna himself requests, Sarva dharmam parityāga mamikam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshasyami masucha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. This is Bhagavad Gita 18.66. We should take this instruction from Krishna and follow in the footsteps of Narada Muni in the disciplic succession. If we simply surrender unto Krishna's lotus feet and take this Krishna consciousness movement seriously, we can be freed from the karma incurred by sin. If we are intelligent enough, we shall engage in the loving service of the Lord. Then our lives will be successful, and we shall not have to suffer like that hunter life after life. By killing animals, not only will we be bereft of a human form, but we will have to take an animal form and somehow or other be killed at the same type of animal we have been killed. This is the law of nature. The Sanskrit word mamsa means meat. It is said, mamsha khadati iti mamamsa. That is, I am now eating the flesh of an animal who will someday in the future be eating my flesh. 253. Yadha kahe bhaya hoite ei amara karma ke mane tari mumuni pamara adama. The hunter then admitted that he was convinced of his sinful activity, and he said, I have been taught this business from my very childhood. Now I am wondering, how can I become freed from these unlimited volumes of sinful activity? Purport. This kind of admission is very beneficial as long as one does not again commit sin. Cheating and hypocrisy are not tolerated by higher authorities. If one understands what sin is, he should give it up with sincerity and regret and surrender unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead through his agent, the pure devotee. In this way, one can be freed from the reactions of sin and make progress in devotional service. However, if one continues committing sins after making some atonement, he will not be saved. In the Shastras, such atonement is compared to an elephant's bathing. An elephant takes a very good bath and cleanses its body very nicely. But as soon as it comes out of the water, it picks up some dust on the shore and throws it all over its body. Atonement may be carried out very nicely, but it will not help a person if he continues committing sins. Therefore, the hunter first admitted his sinful activity before the saintly person Narada, and then asked how he could be saved. 254. Ei papa ya mora ke mana upaye nistara karaha more aronto mara paye. The hunter continued, My dear sir, please tell me how I can be relieved from the reactions of my sinful life. Now I fully surrender unto you and fall down at your lotus feet. Please deliver me from sinful reactions. Purport. By the grace of Narada Muni, the hunter came to his good senses and immediately surrendered unto the saint's lotus feet. This is the process. By associating with a saintly person, one is able to understand the reactions of his sinful life. When one voluntarily surrenders to a saintly person who is a representative of Krishna and follows his instructions, one can become freed from all sinful reactions. Krishna demands the surrender of a sinful man, and Krishna's representative gives the same instructions. The representative of Krishna never tells his disciple, surrender unto me. Rather, he says, surrender unto Krishna. If the disciple accepts this principle and surrenders himself through the representative of Krishna, his life is saved. 255. Narada kaheyari jara mara vachana tabe se kari te pari tomara mochana. Narada Muni assured the hunter, if you listen to my instructions, I shall find the way you can be liberated. Purport. Gurangera Bhakta Gane Jane Jane Shakti Dare. The purport of this song is that the devotees of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are very powerful, and each and every one of them can deliver the whole world. What then to speak of Narada Muni? If one follows the instructions of Narada Muni, one can be delivered from any number of sinful reactions. This is the process. One must follow the instructions of a spiritual master. Then one will certainly be delivered from all sinful reactions. This is the secret of success. Yasya deve para bhaktir yatha deve tata guru. If one has unflinching faith in Krishna and the spiritual master, the result is tasyate katita hyartha prakashante mahatmana. All the conclusions of the revealed scriptures will be open to such a person. A pure devotee of Krishna can make the same demands that Narada Muni is making. He says, if you follow my instructions, I shall take responsibility for your liberation. A pure devotee like Narada can give assurance to any sinful man. By the grace of the Lord, such a devotee is empowered to deliver any sinful person if that person follows the principles set forth. 256. Yadha kahe yei kaha seita kariba narada kahe dhantuka bhanga tabe se kahiba. The hunter then said, My dear sir, whatever you say I shall do. Purport. Narada immediately ordered him, First of all, break your bow, then I shall tell you what is to be done. This is the process of initiation. The disciple must vow that he will no longer commit sinful activity, namely illicit sex, meat eating, gambling, and intoxication. He promises to execute the order of the spiritual master. Then the spiritual master takes care of him and elevates him to spiritual emancipation. 257. Yadha kahe dhanuka bandhile bhariba kemane Narada kahe ameyana diba pratidine. The hunter replied, If I break my bow, how shall I maintain myself? Narada Muni replied, Do not worry, I shall supply all your food every day. The source of your income is not actually the source of our maintenance. Every living being, from the great Brahma down to an insignificant ant, is being maintained by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Eko Bunam Yo Vidhyate Kamam. The one Supreme Being, Krishna, maintains everyone. Our so-called source of income is our own choice only. If I wish to be a hunter, it will appear that hunting is the source of my maintenance. If I become a Brahmana and completely depend on Krishna, I do not conduct a business, but nonetheless my maintenance is supplied by Krishna. The hunter was disturbed about breaking his bow because he was worried about his income. Narada Muni assured the hunter because he knew that the hunter was not being maintained by the bow, but by Krishna. Being the agent of Krishna, Narada Muni knew very well that the hunter would not suffer by breaking the bow. There was no doubt that Krishna would supply him food. 258. Dhanuka bhangi vyadha thandra charane padila tare utana narada upadesha kaila. Being thus assured by the great sage Narada Muni, the hunter broke his bow, immediately fell down at the saint's lotus feet, and fully surrendered. After this, Narada Muni raised him with his hand and gave him instructions for spiritual advancement. Purport. This is a process of initiation. The disciple must surrender to the spiritual master, the representative of Krishna. The spiritual master, being in a disciplic succession stemming from Narada Muni, is in the same category with Narada Muni. A person can be relieved from his sinful activity if he surrenders to the lotus feet of a person who actually represents Narada Muni. Narada Muni gave instructions to the hunter after the hunter surrendered. 259. Garegiya brahmane deha yata chedhana eka eka vastra pari bahira how duhijana. Narada Muni then advised the hunter, return home and distribute whatever riches you have to pure brahmanas who know the absolute truth. After you have distributed all your riches to the brahmanas, you and your wife should leave home, each of you taking only one cloth to wear. Purport. This is the process of renunciation at the stage of the vanaprastha. After enjoying householder life for some time, the husband and wife must leave home and distribute their riches to brahmanas and Vaishnavas. One can keep his wife as an assistant in the vanaprastha stage. The idea is that the wife will assist the husband in spiritual advancement. Therefore, Narada Muni advised the hunter to adopt the vanaprastha stage and leave home. It is not that a grihast should live at home until he dies. Vanaprastha is preliminary to sannyas. In the Krishna consciousness movement, there are many young couples engaged in the Lord's service. Eventually, they are supposed to take vanaprastha, and after vanaprastha, the husband may take sannyas in order to preach. The wife may then remain alone and serve the deity or engage in other activities within the Krishna consciousness movement. 260. Nadi tire ekakani kutira kariya tara age ekapindi tulasi rupiya. Narada Muni continued, leave your home and go to the river. There you should construct a small cottage, and in front of the cottage you should grow a tulsi plant on a raised platform. 261. Tulasi parikrama kara tulasi sevana nirantara Krishna nama kariha kirtana. After planting the tulasi tree before your house, you should daily circumambulate that tulsi plant, serve her by giving her water and other things, and continuously chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Purport. This is the beginning of spiritual life. After leaving householder life, one may go to a holy place, such as the bank of the Ganges or Yamuna, and erect a small cottage. A small cottage can be constructed without any expenditure. 4 logs serving as pillars can be secured by any man from the forest. The roof can be covered with leaves, and one can cleanse the inside. Thus one can live very peacefully. In any condition, any man can live in a small cottage, plant a tulsi tree, water it in the morning, offer up prayers, and continuously chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Thus one can make vigorous spiritual advancement. This is not at all difficult. One simply has to follow the instructions of the spiritual master strictly. Then everything will be successful in due course of time. As far as eating is concerned, there is no problem. If Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, supplies everyone with eatables, why should he not supply his devotee? Sometimes a devotee will not even bother to construct a cottage. He will simply go live in a mountain cave. One may live in a cave, in a cottage beside a river, in a palace, or in a big city like New York or London. In any case, a devotee can follow the instructions of his spiritual master and engage in devotional service by watering the tulasi plant and chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Taking the advice of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and our spiritual master Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, one can go to any part of the world and instruct people to become devotees of the Lord by following the regulative principles worshipping the tulsi plant, and continuously chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. 262. Amito maya bahu anapatai modine, sei analabeyata kaudu vijane. Narada Muni continued, every day I shall send sufficient food to you both. You can take as much food as you want. Purport. When a person takes the Krishna consciousness, there is no need to care for material necessities. Krishna says, Yogakshemam Vadhamyaham. I personally carry all necessities to my devotees. Why should one be anxious about the necessities of life? The principle should be that one should not want more than what is absolutely necessary. Narada Muni advises the hunter to accept only what is absolutely necessary for him and his wife. The devotee should always be alert to consume only those things that he absolutely requires and not create unnecessary needs. 263. Tabesei Mrgari Tine Narada Susta Kaila Sustahanam Mrgari Tine Dana Palaila. The three animals that were half killed were then brought to their consciousness by the sage Narada. Indeed, the animals got up and swiftly fled. 264. Dekhiya vyadhe ramane haila chamatkara gare gela vyadha guru ke kari namaskara. When the hunter saw the half-killed animals flee, he was certainly struck with wonder. He then offered his respectful obeisances to the sage Narada and returned home. 265. Yatastane Narada Gela Vyadha Gare Aila Naradera Upadeshe Sakala Karila. After all, this Narada Muni went to his destination. After the hunter returned home, he exactly followed the instructions of his spiritual master, Narada. Purport. For spiritual advancement, one must have a bona fide spiritual master and follow his instructions in order to be assured of advancement. 266. Ramedvani Haila Vyadha Vaishnava Haila Ramera Loka Sabana Anite Lagila. The news that the hunter had become a Vaishnava spread all over the village. Indeed, all the villagers brought alms and presented them to the Vaishnava who had formerly been a hunter. Purport. It is the duty of the public to present a gift to a saintly person, Vaishnava or Brahmana, when going to see him. Every Vaishnava is dependent on Krishna, and Krishna is ready to supply all of life's necessities, provided the Vaishnava follows the principles set forth by the spiritual master. There are certainly many householders in our Krishna consciousness movement. They join the movement and live in the society centers. But if they take advantage of this opportunity and do not work but live at the expense of the movement, eating prasadam and simply sleeping, they place themselves in a very dangerous position. It is therefore advised that grihastas should not live in the temple. They must live outside the temple and maintain themselves. Of course, if the grihastas are fully engaged in the Lord's service, according to the directions of the authorities, there is no harm in their living in the temple. In any case, a temple should not be a place to eat and sleep. The temple manager should be very careful about these things. 267. Ekadina anaane dasa vishajane nine tata laya yata kaya duijane. In one day, enough food was brought for 10 or 20 people. The hunter and his wife would only accept as much as they could eat. 268. Ekadina narada kahe sunaha parvate amara ekasishache chalaha dekite. One day, while speaking to his friend Parvata Muni, Narada Muni requested him to go with him to see his disciple, the hunter. 269. Tabedui rishi aila sei vyarhastane dura hoite vyarha paila gurura darshane. As the saintly sages approached the hunter's place, the hunter could see them from a distance. 270. Aste vyaste dana ase pata nahi paya patera pipilika iti uti dare paya. With the great alacrity, the hunter began to run towards his spiritual master. But he could not fall down and offer obeisances because ants were running hither and thither around his feet. 271. Dandavatstane pipi likare dekhiya vastre stana jadi pade dandavatana. Seeing the ants, the hunter whisked them away with a piece of cloth. After thus clearing the ants from the ground, he fell down flat to offer his obeisances. The word danda means rod, and vat means like. To offer obeisances to a spiritual master, one must fall flat exactly as a rod falls on the ground. This is the meaning of the word dandavat. 272. Narada kahevyada eina haya ascharya hari bhakti himsa sunya haya sadhu varya. Narada Muni said, "My dear hunter, such behavior is not at all astonishing. A man in devotional service is automatically non-violent. He is the best of gentlemen." Purport. In this verse, the word sadhu varya means the best of gentlemen. At the present moment, there are many so-called gentlemen who are expert in killing animals and birds. Nonetheless, these so-called gentlemen profess a type of religion that strictly prohibits killing. According to Narada Muni in Vedic culture, animal killers are not even gentlemen, to say nothing of being religious men. A religious person, a devotee of the Lord, must be non-violent. Such is the nature of a religious person. It is contradictory to be violent and at the same time call oneself a religious person. Such hypocrisy is not approved by Narada Muni and the disciplic succession. Text 273. Jitenahya adbhuta vyadha tavhimsa dayo guna haribhakto pravrittaye nateshu paratapina. O hunter, good qualities like non-violence which you have developed are not very astonishing for those engaged in the Lord's devotional service. O hunter, good qualities like non-violence which you have developed are not very astonishing, for those engaged in the Lord's devotional service are never inclined to give pain to others because of envy. Purport. This is a quote from the Skanda Purana. Text 274. Tabesei vyadhadonhare angane anila kushashanani donhare bhakte vashaila. The hunter then received the two great sages in the courtyard of his house. He spread out a straw mat for them to sit upon, and with great devotion he begged them to sit down. 275. Jalani bhakte dhunhara para praksha lila sei jala stri purushe piya shire laila. He then fetched water and washed the sage's feet with great devotion. Then both husband and wife drank that water and sprinkled it on their heads. This is the process one should follow when receiving the spiritual master or someone on the level of the spiritual master. When the spiritual master comes to the residence of his disciples, the disciples should follow in the footsteps of the former hunter. It doesn't matter what one was before initiation. After initiation, one must learn the etiquette mentioned herein. (276) Kampapula kasruhaila Krishna namagana Urvabadu nrityakare Vastra udana. When the hunter chanted the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra before his spiritual master, his body trembled and tears welled up in his eyes. Filled with ecstatic love, he raised his hands and began to dance, waving his garments up and down. (277) Dekhiya vyadhera prema parvata mahamuni naradera kahe tumi haos parshamani. When Parvata Muni saw the ecstatic loving symptoms of the hunter, he told Narada, "Certainly you are a touchstone." Purport. When a touchstone touches iron, it turns the iron to gold. Parvata Muni called Narada Muni a touchstone because by his touch the hunter, who was the lowest among men, became an elevated and perfect Vaishnava. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that the position of a Vaishnava can be tested by seeing how good a touchstone he is. That is, seeing how many Vaishnavas he has made during his life. A Vaishnava should be a touchstone so that he can convert others to Vaishnavism by his preaching, even though people may be fallen like the hunter. There are many so-called advanced devotees who sit in a secluded place for their personal benefit. They do not go out and preach and convert others to the Vaishnavas, and therefore they certainly cannot be called a Sparshamani, advanced devotee. Kanista Adhikari devotees cannot turn others into Vaishnavas, but a Madhyama Adhikari Vaishnava can do so by preaching. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised his followers to increase the numbers of Vaishnavas. Yaradeke tare kaha Krishna upadesha Amara agya guru hanatara edesha. That's from Madhya Lila, chapter 7, text 128. Continuing with the purport, it is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's wish that everyone should become a Vaishnava and Guru. Following the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his disciplic succession, one can become a spiritual master, for the process is very easy. One can go everywhere and anywhere to preach the instructions of Krishna. The Bhagavad Gita is Krishna's instructions. Therefore, the duty of every Vaishnava is to travel and preach the Bhagavad Gita, either in his country or a foreign country. This is the test of Sparsha Mani, following in the footsteps of Narada Muni. 278. Aho danyo siddhi darshe kripaya yasya takshanat icho pulako lebe rubdhako ratim achute. Parvata Muni continued, "My dear friend Narada Muni, you are glorified as the sage among the demigods. By your mercy, even a low-born person like this hunter can immediately become attached to Lord Krishna." Purport. A pure Vaishnava believes in the statements of the Shastras. This verse is quoted from the Vedic literature, the Skanda Purana. 279. Narada kahe Vaishnava tomarana kichu aya yadha kahe yare pato se diya. Narada Muni then asks the hunter, "My dear Vaishnava, do you have some income for your maintenance?" Purport. The hunter replied, "My dear spiritual master, whoever you send gives me something when he comes to see me." This confirms the statement in Bhagavad Gita 9.22, to the effect that the Lord carries all necessities to his Vaishnava devotee. Narada Muni asked the former hunter how he was being maintained, and he replied that everyone who came to see him brought him something for his maintenance. Krishna, who is situated in everyone's heart, says, I personally carry all necessities to a Vaishnava. He can order anyone to execute this. Everyone is ready to give something to a Vaishnava, and if a Vaishnava is completely engaged in devotional service, then he need not be anxious for his maintenance. 280. Eta napato kichu karya nai sabedui janara yogya bhaksha matra chai. The former hunter said, please do not send so much grain. Only send what is sufficient for 2 people, no more. Purport. The former hunter only wanted enough for 2 people to eat, no more. It is not necessary for a Vaishnava to keep a stock of food for the next day. He should receive only sufficient grain to last 1 day. The next day he must again depend on the Lord's mercy. This is the instruction of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When his personal servant Govinda sometimes kept a stock of haritaki, maro balan, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chastised him, saying, why do you keep a stock for the next day? Srila Rupa Goswami and others were begging daily from door to door for their sustenance, and they never attempted to stock for their ashram with food for the next day. We should not materially calculate, thinking it is better to stock food for a week. Why give the Lord trouble by having him bring food daily? One should be convinced that the Lord will provide daily. There is no need for stock for the next day. Thus ends our reading for today. All glories to Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Namalacharya Maharaj Ki Jai. Glories to Sripad Bhakti Vijani Muni Maharaj. All glories to Sripad Bhakti Niskama Shanti Maharaj Ki Jai. Glories to the assembled devotees Ki Jai.